Consumer tech companies are bypassing traditional healthcare friction to stream AI directly to consumers. Anyone with a smartphone can access 24/7 autonomous mental health support. The market pitch relies on a specific assumption that these algorithms are clinically mature enough to navigate psychiatric risk without human oversight. But if you look at how these exact same companies operate when money and liability are on the line, a contradiction emerges. The platforms selling you an unsupervised algorithm are quietly paying human clinicians to supervise their own enterprise systems. This split reveals two competing architectures. On the left is supervised AI, where human clinicians remain in the loop. On the right is autonomous AI, operating entirely on its own. Developers are bifurcating their technology. They sell the supervised model to corporate buyers who demand accountability, and they push the autonomous model to average consumers paying for cheap access. By looking at enterprise product sheets, reading clinical trial methodology footnotes, and tracking incoming state legislation, we see which architecture is winning. The massive deployment of autonomous mental health AI is an economic function of scaling without a workforce. It is not proof of clinical safety. Sword Health runs one of the largest clinical AI operations in the world, with over 11 million care sessions and contracts with 20% of the Fortune 500. They recently launched a direct-to-consumer product called Dawn. The pitch is round-the-clock mental health support powered by domain-specific AI models. Dawn is explicitly designed to operate without a human in the loop. The marketing highlights that no clinician observes your conversations. If a user in that unsupervised environment experiences a psychiatric crisis, Dawn's escalation protocol is a software handoff to 988, the public national lifeline. Sword also operates an older business-to-business product called Mind, which is sold to health plans and large employers. This flowchart compares crisis routing. Dawn offloads users to the 988 lifeline. Mind routes them to a licensed psychologist. The enterprise platform retains clinical oversight. When human judgment matters, psychologists step in with full context to manage the intervention. Corporate buyers audit clinical outcomes and hold vendors accountable for risk. To win those contracts, the product must be built with supervised safeguards. The direct-to-consumer market optimizes for immediate access and low subscription fees, allowing companies to strip out the costly clinician layer entirely. A company reveals which architecture it trusts by examining what it builds for clients who demand audited safety. We see this exact same architectural split in academic research. The headlines say one thing, while the method sections reveal another. A major trial published in JAMA Network Open tested a conversational AI agent named Kai. The press widely reported that the AI produced better anxiety reductions than human group therapy. Those headlines omit the actual safety architecture of the experiment. The trial's registered protocol shows that severe acute risk patients were excluded before the study began. The participants who remained were monitored weekly for distress, and a licensed clinical psychologist was on call for real-time escalation. Flagship studies proving the efficacy of autonomous AI consistently secure ethics board approval by baking human safety nets into their footnotes. The absolute necessity of this clinical scaffolding becomes glaringly obvious when models operate at an uncontrolled global scale. OpenAI's own internal data shows that roughly 1.2 million people per week use ChatGPT to express explicit suicidal ideation. Handling a public health event of that magnitude poses massive regulatory and legal risks for a general-purpose chat application. To manage this crisis, OpenAI's leadership is navigating two contradictory public positions. Recently, their communications team published a safety framework outlining a referral system where difficult cases are assessed by mental health and behavioral experts using structured criteria. Simultaneously, their legal team is arguing in federal court that ChatGPT is absolutely not a mental health product. Either the lawyers are misrepresenting the product, or the communications team is marketing an expert escalation system that does not exist at scale. When faced with millions of high-risk psychiatric interactions, AI companies quietly build, or claim to build, supervised human-in-the-loop pipelines. State legislatures are realizing this gap between marketing and reality, and they are rapidly writing the supervised architecture into law. Multiple independent state governments are converging on the exact same legal requirements for companion chatbots. The Florida Senate recently passed an AI Bill of Rights with near-unanimous bipartisan support. The bill demands specific guardrails, mandatory parental consent for minors, periodic reminders of AI interaction, and strict interception of harmful content. This is not isolated to Florida. A parallel effort is taking shape in New England. The Connecticut Senate passed a 64-page omnibus bill enforcing nearly identical safety, disclosure, and crisis escalation standards for emotional support AI products. State leaders have repeatedly compressed, revised, and reintroduced these tech regulations across multiple legislative sessions until they pass. While lawmakers draft new rules, courts are actively enforcing existing ones. New Mexico is pursuing aggressive legal action against major social platforms for endangering children. The state's proposed injunction demands real age verification and the blocking of algorithmic feeds and push notifications during sleep hours. However, Meta's leadership immediately rejected these demands in their recent court filings. They stated that if these safety features are mandated, they may simply pull Facebook and Instagram out of New Mexico entirely, claiming the modifications are technically impossible to build. Age verification and notification caps are standard software features. Calling them impossible is an admission that the platform's revenue depends on unsupervised, ungated engagement. When a technology company threatens to abandon an entire state rather than implement clinical guardrails, it demonstrates that their autonomous consumer model is structurally incompatible with safety laws. Today, enterprise contracts, academic review boards, state legislation, and courtroom injunctions are all locking into a unified standard. This graphic brings our initial matrix back into focus. The supervised column is backed by audited B2B health plans, peer-reviewed clinical trial methodology, and multi-state legal requirements. The autonomous column relies almost entirely on consumer product marketing, press release headlines, and defensive litigation. Whenever a technology company is forced to document its safety protocols for a corporate buyer, an ethics board, or a federal judge, it acknowledges the necessity of clinical supervision. For healthcare providers treating patients who use digital tools, the relevant question is no longer whether an app uses artificial intelligence. The relevant question is exactly what human escalation path sits behind it. For developers building these products, multi-jurisdictional compliance is setting a hard regulatory baseline that will overrule consumer marketing. Relying entirely on autonomous models to manage mental health care is a temporary economic loophole. The legally mandated future of digital health is supervised.